Good afternoon, students of class 7. Today we would be proceeding with the supplementary text reader, which we have already started. The chapter which we are doing was the cop and the anthem. Okay, so let us start with the story, but before I ask you to open the book, let me ask you a few questions about what we have done in the previous class. Okay, so tell me, why did Soapy want to go to prison? Why did Soapy want to go to prison? Okay. Good afternoon, students. And so, as he thought that prison was the best place for him, yes, because he did not have a house to live in or food to eat. So, the best way in which he could pass his winter was to go to prison, right? And so, he wanted to go to prison, right? So, let us continue. Have you been able to join the call? Yes, Ornesha. For 3 months, food every day and a bed every night, 3 months safe from cold north wind. Yes, correct. Shaptoshi, what did you write? I have not seen it. So, the next question is, what was the name of the prison where he wanted to go? What was the name of the place where the prison was situated? Yes, correct. Shaptoshi, you are right. He thought that prison was the best place for him to pass the tough winter months. You have to mention the fact that he had to pass the difficult winter, and so he wanted to go to prison. Yes, Blackwell's Island, correct. Right answer. Now, tell me, one of you please open your book. We will continue today. Till which portion we are going to continue? Tell me. We are going to continue from page number 623, I think, right? Yes, page number 23, which paragraph? So, we have already understood that Soapy has determined, he has made plans of getting caught by a police, okay, by a cop, but how he proceeds towards fulfilling his dream. So, his dream is to get caught by a policeman, cop, and the consequence of that dream is to be sent to Blackwell's Island. Right. Now, this was his dream. Now, how does he plan to fulfill his dream? The first point that he does is to go to a lavish restaurant. To go to a lavish restaurant and to order food from there, to eat there, and afterwards tell them that he is unable to pay. Yes, ask me a question. What question do you have? And one of you please tell me from which portion we will start today? From which paragraph? Okay, so this was, what's the meaning of hub? Hub means a place where something important happens, okay, like the hub of cultural activity, the hub of education, okay, like that. That means the place. Lavish means very rich, very brilliant, very aristocratic, only something which the rich people can afford. Tell me from which place we will begin. So, the first plan or the first idea which Soapy has about getting caught is to go to a fine restaurant. This is the first plan that he has, to go to a fine restaurant where very rich people go, and then to, after having a meal, telling them that I am not able to pay because I don't have any money. Failing to give the money, those people will obviously call the police, and then he will be caught. He will be caught, he will be sent to prison, and on top of it all, he would have a lovely dinner. Okay. So, this was his plan, right. So, he goes to a very rich restaurant at first. At first, he goes to a very fine restaurant, and come to page number 23. He began thinking of what he would like to eat. Even before entering the restaurant, he was planning in his head that what kind of food he would like to have. Okay. What kind of food he would like to have, about that he was trying to find out. Okay. Then he thought that if I am going there, if I am going to that restaurant, let me search or let me find out what kind of food I am going to order. So, he was planning to himself. In his mind, he could see the whole dinner. Even before stepping into the restaurant, he could picture the entire dinner which will be in front of him. The cost would not be too high. He did not want the restaurant people to feel any real anger. The cost of the meal will not be very high, okay, and so he did not want the restaurant people to feel any real anger towards him. But the dinner would leave him filled and happy for the journey to his winter home. But the dinner would be so grand that he would feel happy and contented. He would be satisfied because the dinner would be so good, it would satisfy him. But as Soapy put his foot inside the restaurant door, the head waiter saw his broken old shoes and the torn clothes that covered his legs. Strong and ready hands turned Soapy around and moved him quietly and quickly outside again. So, as he stepped inside the restaurant, the head waiter who was there, he saw the broken shoes of postponement, means something which goes away from the expected dates, which goes back from the expected date, okay, which delays, okay, delay in something. So, the moment he went inside the restaurant door, strong and ready hands, it means the waiter who was quite strong, the head waiter was strong as well as ready for action. All the time he was ready for dealing with situations like this, in which people who were not welcome into the restaurant would come into the restaurant and interfere with the smooth running of the restaurant. Okay. So, they came and they turned Soapy around and moved him quietly outside again. Soapy turned off Broadway. It seemed that this easy way to the island was not to be his. So, he turned away from Broadway and he thought that this easy way of going to prison was not going to be successful. He must think of some other way of getting there. He must think of some other way in which he could go. So, the first plan that he had, to go to a lavish restaurant, have a dinner there and not pay, was not successful. Okay, so the first plan was not successful. Come back to the story. At a corner of 6th Avenue was a shop with a wide glass window, bright with electric lights. Soapy picked up a big stone and threw it through the glass. People came running around the corner. A cop was the first among them. Soapy stood still and he smiled when he saw the cop. So, at a corner of 6th Avenue, there was a shop with a big glass window, right? And it was bright with electric lights. The window was full of electric lights. Soapy picked up a big stone and threw it through the glass. He picked up a stone and threw it through the glass window. People came running around the corner because there was such a big noise which was created because of the fact that Soapy threw the stone at the glass window, that everybody came to the spot to hear what the source of that noise was. A cop was the first among them. That means among all the people who were running to see what has happened there, the policeman was the first to arrive. Soapy stood still. That means he stood like this, rigidly, without moving. And he smiled when he saw the cop. He saw the cop and he smiled. Why do you think he smiled? Because the cop was the ticket to Blackwell's Island. His ticket to Blackwell's Island. That means the cop was the way by which, if the cop arrests him, avenue means a street, okay, a street. So, there was Soapy standing there without moving from that place, and then Soapy was looking at the cop, and the cop asked him, "Where's the man that did that?" Asked the cop. "Don't you think that I might have done it?" asked Soapy. He was friendly and happy. What he wanted was coming towards him. So, Soapy was very cooperating towards the cop. Okay, he was very friendly and in a happy mood. But the cop's mind would not consider Soapy. Men who break windows do not stop there to talk to cops. They run away as fast as they can. The cop saw a man further along the street running. He ran after him. So, the cop did not even consider Soapy as a convict, as a felon, or as a person who can do a crime, right? He thought that Soapy was simply making fun of the situation. He was standing there. So, the cop did not consider Soapy as the criminal, right? The cop saw a man further along the street running. He ran after him. So, the cop saw that a man was running in the street, and he started running after the man. And Soapy, sick at heart, walked slowly away. He had failed 2 times. So, the first time was dining at a fine restaurant. The second time was breaking a glass window of a big shop. Both times he was not caught by the cop. Across the street was another restaurant. It was not so fine as the one on Broadway. The people who went there were not so rich. Its food was not so good. Into this, Soapy took his old shoes and his torn clothes, and no one stopped him. He sat down at a table and was soon eating a big dinner. So, again the same thing which he had done previously, going to a restaurant, he repeated the same action, and he also intended not to pay the people in the restaurant, but this restaurant was of a average quality. So, even though Soapy looked like a person who belonged to the poor class of the society, nobody stopped him from sitting down and eating a dinner. Okay. So, he ordered a dinner and he ate. When he had finished, he said that he had no money. So, when he had finished eating the dinner, he said that I don't have any money. Get busy and call a cop. He was even suggesting or giving them ideas of what they can do about it. That Soapy did not pay them. He was telling them to call a policeman. And don't keep a gentleman waiting. That means don't keep me waiting for a long time. Go and call the cop. The 2 waiters who were there, they said, "No cop for you," said the waiter. He called another waiter. So, he said that we don't need any cop to handle people like you. We know very well how to handle you. So, the 2 waiters threw Soapy upon his left ear on the hard street outside. They just took Soapy and they threw Soapy on the street. It was a hard street and he fell on his left ear. Okay. He stood up slowly, one part at a time, and beat the dust from his clothes. He slowly stood up, one part at a time. That means slowly he was standing up, because he had a lot of physical pain because of the big fall that he had falling down on the solid street. His body was covered, that means he was feeling too much pain. So he was standing up slowly, and then he beat the dust from his clothes. That means he got rid of the dust from his clothes by beating his clothes. Okay. Prison seemed only a happy dream. The island seemed very far away. Now, as he had failed thrice, 3 times he had failed, prison didn't seem like something that he would get very easily. It seemed like a happy dream which was very far away from him. A cop who was standing near laughed and walked away. A cop who was standing near laughed at Soapy and walked away. Soapy started moving again. He started walking again. When he stopped, he was near several theatres. In this part of the city, streets are brighter and hearts are more joyful than in other parts. Women and men in rich warm coats moved happily in the winter air. A sudden fear caught Soapy. No cop was going to arrest him. So again he thought about the dream that he had of spending his winter months in prison. So then he went towards that place, and a cop who was standing there laughed and walked away. He laughed when Soapy was thrown out into the hard pavement. He did not even arrest him, but he laughed at him and he walked away. Then he came to a part of the city where there were lots of theatres. Okay, lots of places, movie theatres were there, and people who lived there or moved about there, streets seemed much more happy. The streets were brighter. Okay, everything was more full of life. A sudden fear caught Soapy. No cop was going to arrest him. So suddenly he became very afraid. Why? Because he thought that no cop was going to arrest him. Maybe there was no way he could spend his days on Blackwell's prison. Then he came to another cop stand, come to page number 26. Then he came to another cop standing in front of a big theatre. He thought of something else to try. He began to shout as if he had too much to drink. His voice was as loud as he could make it. He danced, he cried out. Now, the fourth idea, the fourth plan of getting caught, what was it? He started acting like a drunken man, a person who has had a lot of alcohol, and because of that he couldn't keep a control over his activities. Okay, so he was acting like a drunk man, and he was acting in a funny manner. How he was doing? He began to shout. He started shouting, making a lot of acting. He was shouting and he started dancing also. Okay, so he was dancing and shouting so that the policeman might catch him for bad behavior in a public area. And the cop turned his back to Soapy and said to a man standing near him, "It's one of those college boys. He won't hurt anything. We have orders to let them shout." So looking at the, he saw a cop that was there, and he was acting like a drunken man. He was misbehaving in a public place, but even then he was not caught. Why? Because the cop thought that he is simply a college boy. Okay, and so this gives you the first idea about Soapy's age, that maybe Soapy was not an old man, but he was a young boy. Okay, he was not very old, he was a young man. Because if the policeman can confuse him with a college boy, that means Soapy was not very aged. So the cop simply said that it's one of those college boys. We are given the order to let them go, not to arrest them, and he won't hurt anything. Soapy was quiet. Okay, so he did not do any more actions when he heard that. Was no cop going to touch him? He began to think of the island as if it were as far away as a star. He pulled his thin coat around him. The wind was very cold. Then he saw a man in a shop buying a newspaper. The man's umbrella stood beside the door. Soapy stepped inside the shop, took the umbrella and walked slowly away. Okay, so Soapy saw another person, that means this plan also was not successful of getting caught. So he just pulled his thin coat around him firmly, and then he went towards another man who was standing there. Okay. He saw that a man was there in a shop buying a newspaper. The man's umbrella stood beside the door. So, the umbrella of the man was just kept beside the door, and Soapy saw that the man was buying newspaper. Soapy stepped inside the shop, took the umbrella and walked away. The man followed him quickly. "My umbrella," he said. "Oh, is it? Why don't you call a cop? I took it, your umbrella. Why don't you call a cop? There's one standing at the corner. So you see, I'm taking your umbrella. I'm like a thief. Why don't you call the cop?" But there's a twist which even happens here. Let's find out. So even though he stole the umbrella from the man will not call a cop. See why? The man walked more slowly. Now he was following Soapy, but he was following him very slowly. Soapy did the same. Soapy also started walking very slowly so that the man did not miss him. But he had a feeling that he was going to fail again because he did not see the man calling a cop. There was no urgency in the man's exterior or in his behavior to show Soapy that he was going to call a cop. The cop looked at the two men. So there was a cop where Soapy went and the man was also there. "I," said the umbrella man, "that is, you know how these things happen. If that's your umbrella, I'm very sorry. I found it this morning in a restaurant. If you say it's yours, I hope you will." "It's mine," cried Soapy with anger in his voice. The umbrella man hurried away. The cop helped a lady cross the street. Okay, so this was a twist which Soapy did not predict. The man from whom he stole the umbrella was actually a man who had stolen the umbrella. That means he was also a man who did not own the umbrella himself, and he had taken the umbrella from a restaurant. Okay, so the man thought that it was actually Soapy's umbrella. Because of this turn of the situation, Soapy was not caught this time also. The umbrella man hurried away. That means he walked away quickly from that place. The cop helped a lady across the street. Soapy walked east. He went east of that area. He threw the umbrella as far as he could throw it, which tells you that Soapy was frustrated because he was repeatedly having so many failures. He was frustrated with the activity. He did not feel like doing any more thing. He talked to himself about cops and what he thought of them. Because he wished to be arrested, they seemed to believe he was like a king who could do no wrong. He started talking to himself about how cops were. Because Soapy wanted to be arrested, cops did not arrest him. The cops thought that he was like a king who can do no wrong at all. Okay. At last, Soapy came to one of the quiet streets on the side of the city. He turned here and began to walk south towards Madison Square. He was going home, although home was only a seat in the park. Okay, so now Soapy started having a journey towards a quiet street of the city where he turned and began to walk south towards Madison Square. So he was going towards Madison Square, back to the park in Madison Square where he used to spend his night. Okay, he was going home, although home was only a seat in the park. For him, home was a seat in the Madison Square Park. Okay, so today we will stop over here. Till this portion, if you have any problem, please ask me. Do you have any problem? Do you have any confusion about what we did today? Okay, so how many times did Soapy endeavor to get caught and how many times did he fail? Tell me, how many times did he try to get caught? Till this point of the story, how many times did he try to get caught? 5 times, okay. And did he succeed? He failed in all the 5 instances, right? Okay. Fine. So, we will continue with the story in the next class. We will find out what happens to Soapy, if he ultimately gets caught or not, okay. So, thank you students for today's lesson.